Hello and welcome back to another episode of Cyber Voices, the official podcast of the Australian Information Security Association, otherwise known as AISA. I'm your host, as always, David Willett, and it is my pleasure to have you with us as we explore the diverse voices of the Australian cyber industry. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy part 2 of my conversation with Denny Wan. One thing that I see or have seen time and again is people probably just leaning in too much to that analysis without a pre-thought around how they're going to turn that analysis into a strategy.
Yeah.
And sometimes these reviews that you do, especially when you are, paying someone to do it on your behalf, can usually present you with so much tactical recommendations, right? Implement this control, turn DLP on, write a policy that says you do this, where people still need to be able to take that information away and do something like a risk analysis and go, all right, well, which one means the most to me? If I'm starting out fresh, I can't do these 100 recommendations in the next 12 months, or maybe I could, right? Different organizations are different, but it's about trying to look at that and go, well, what's the key issue here? Is my identity management not up to scratch? You talked about MFA just there. Like, is that what you need to focus on? Do you just need to spend the next 12 months not necessarily doing the 100 recommendations you get from whatever analysis you've done, but maybe picking the 5 or even the 3, right? It's entirely what is right for you and your organization. But pick the ones that are going to make, the biggest amount of difference and do those really well, as opposed to having a whole list of 5% completes. And that is something that I still see a lot of people wrestle with. And because I don't know, I feel like as cybersecurity professionals, we don't always want to admit that we're going to have to own a little bit of risk. Yeah. Because we don't want that on our backs. But at the same time, if you are very pragmatic about it and very considered in that approach and go, look, we've done the measurements. Yes, there's lots of things that we could be doing, but only a certain amount of things that right now we should, because we can't afford to do all of them. We don't have the resources to do all of them. And I wonder, have you observed similar kind of behaviors?
What you mentioned just now, a very insightful point is, a lot of our members felt they have to own some of the risks because the role they're entrusted to and the decision they're trusted to make. What the fair communication conversation, they help them to see that they are not the one owning the risk. They are not expected to, they're not, but they often get blamed. And thus, we generally recognize that a lot of sites in Australia, also globally, tenure is around 2 to 3 years. You either get burned out, thrown under the bus, or both, right? And these are unnecessary, unhealthy situations where the sites are pushed into the corner and being framed as owning the cyber risk. The reality is they don't own the risk because, let's go back to MFA example, because it's topical and people understand it. And then you can understand the MFA adoption problem without knowing anything about the MFA technology. And that statement kind of explained the difference between examining the risk model and improving risk model, such as is SMS, not as good as
having an app,
yeah. And that's all true. Rather than just the business impact, measuring risk to just use it. Even basic SMS, not as good as it is, still useful. And often that's resisted. And often they come back to the most common reason for resisting MFA is, I don't want MFA on my personal device. And we can't afford to give you a copy device. So 2 of the presentation I have in the next couple of days are being a cyber champion one in a non-for-profit and one in a local council, to look at that psychology of how you change the dynamics in a conversation, being a champion, to bring those thoughts together. So the communication risk is the key. And our encouragement member, not recommendation, to really don't feel they need to own the risk, because the reality is, and it's not a joke, is as said and Diamond, that our perception is we got cyber insurance. Maybe I don't need you. You're too expensive. You're a roadblock. When, of course, we know cyber insurance or any insurance for that matters are not solving the problems. It's a necessary risk management tool, but it's not solving the problem. We need to do something more than that. But it's such an easy conversation to have, right? So the root cause of that is, I don't want to have that conversation about the mitigation or control enforcement because I don't believe in your risk measurement. So I got an easy answer, insurance, because my premium has put the risk coverage for me. So I know that's real. Or it's not. So I won't go into a debate on that. And I want to finish on this last point. And I mentioned earlier on, I'm very honored to be named as the ambassador CI AISA Information Sharing Network. And the role of AISA is really different. They don't create frameworks. They create a network for trusted information sharing, because Australian government and all government had a parallel network called TINT, Trusted Information Network, right? The sector-specific.
TISN, yep.
Yeah, TISN, and by invitation only, you cannot apply, right? So by invitation only, those sectors. So ISAC is more open source or public, but, that's why they saw the value of me focus on risk measurement, or the risk model would help the mission to better communicate in the risk and better understand what threat looks like, particularly critical infrastructure. And then improving the communication, improving the trust in the risk measurement without attacking the risk model will help to de-escalate the mistrust that has already existed. And as I said earlier on, measure of success in that case is not get consensus or move the needle forward, is get people to agree to disagree. So we now know what's the next step, so we can actually move the needle.
You're touching on collaboration and information sharing there. That's been a real key thing in my own career as young and youthful as I know I look. But I've been around for a little bit now, and I can remember early days. It was very isolating at times, trying to sort of figure out, what's the right way forward. And then I figured out through joining AISA and through joining other groups that collaboration is really, really powerful. And I know you're, through all of your work as a fellow and an ambassador for AISA and FAIR and CI ISAC and everything that you do, that's a big point for you. What role do you see collaboration playing in strengthening, cyber defense strategies across the board?
I think I will defer to a more learned colleague in the AISA community to speak about collaboration. I will just stick to my knitting to say an enabler of collaboration is to build trust in risk measurement. Because without that trust, the rest probably would not be able to sustain. And what I draw attention to, the focus, hopefully the message can hold and take away, is aware this risk measurement standard is available, open source, vetted by NIST, and even in a batch into NIST 836. So check it out. And that is a starting point. Would it result in collaboration? That's very context specific, and that's where ISAC come in. Is they really building a culture of trust is sharing information.
Exactly. And it's building a community as well.
That's right.
Which I hope is addressing some of that stuff that you're talking about before with burnout. I've seen fellow CISOs really succumb to that and leave the industry and try and find other roles in technology. And sometimes it's because it's really hard and the stress that's put on us is a lot. And other times it's because they're struggling to grasp a lot of the concepts that we've been talking about today around, truly being able to quantify and communicate and build that trust and relationship with the business around what it is they should be doing and why. Getting over those detractors or getting those detractors on side, the ones who say, "Oh, no, it's fine. We've just got insurance." Yeah, like how do you? There's such a challenge for a lot of people to be able to do that, and some people just go, "Oh, it's too hard." And that's why I absolutely encourage people to get out and learn from others, but also be willing to switch tactics as well. What I see people do sometimes is they go so hard on like, I'm going to do NIST, I'm going to do NIST CSF and I'm going to make it work. And the business just isn't buying it.
No.
But they still keep going to it because they don't want to admit defeat. And that's a key thing. I think sometimes we need to just sort of go, you know what? This strategy isn't working. It's time to switch. It's an evolving industry, so evolve with it. is what I like to say to people.
But there's only so much a business leader can afford to learn cyber. And the idea is, why don't we meet them halfway? Because the fact is, cyber leaders, they have the size of yourself has so much to contribute to organizations. They should not be thrown under the bus or led to burn out after 2 years. Why don't you empower them to bring them and give them the opportunity to make really impact organization, make strategic decisions? And sometimes the contributing factor is they are being siloed and pigeonholed as a technology leader, doesn't understand the big picture. So our approach business school said, you are educating the next generation business leader. Why can you help to educate the cyber leader and give them a risk education without necessarily commit to an arduous program or MBA? And of course, AGM is well known to, as a global leader MBA education. So they say, yeah, it would make sense. So that is, I encourage a member to just think through. If you're a CISO today, you should think that there's a right time you put the hands up and said, you should be given a bigger challenge. You should step up to the role, and lots of role open to CISO. Given a crowdsourced situation, they are well primed to take a role of CIO, of course CTO, maybe even COO, to really drive operations, not just a CISO, and as a technology leader.
Yeah, and you can still have that cyber impact. Yeah, like CISO doesn't have to be forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I encourage our member to reach out and get a recording from me or from the New South Wales Business School to kind of learn from what this risk communication looks like.
And you make a really good point there in general around how you should always be learning and always growing, and that goes back to sort of the point I was getting at before with around being willing to accept that maybe an approach or a strategy has not worked.
Yes. Yeah.
And to have that self-awareness to stop and ask why and run it by other people and pressure test that. I'm in the middle of building a prolonged cyber strategy myself at the moment. I'm not pretending like I've got all the answers. I'm showing every person and their dog that strategy and roadmap and pressure testing it. Like, please tell me where I'm wrong, because I need to know that I've got a good informed view here that is not entirely my own.
Yeah, I can just interrupt that. You made a very good point. Is the notion that is right or wrong, and I would say is either beholder. And I think you agree with me because, as you said, you are inviting people to stress test your proposal and your roadmap, right? So you are getting the feedback. So it is either beholder. And really coming back to the full circle, or we have a conversation, the common language, in fact, the only language you can use is to measure the risk reduction in financial terms. Absolutely. Because there's so many stakeholders, and cyber is definitely no language they were familiar with.
Yeah.
So the risk communication tool, FAIR or otherwise, there are other standards. FAIR is the only open source standard NIST endorsed, but there are other standards, of course, they're proprietary standard from big consulting firms. Whatever that you chose that you're comfortable with, you can afford to invest in the platform methodology. But I think the insights that cyber have a major strategic impact on organizations, and this 86 is a blueprint. So you, as a cyber leader, please investigate, NIST 86 and understand what NIST blueprints looks like, and step forward to your executive and say, look, you should be empowered to drive the strategic conversation. Stress test that you must, but you must be given an opportunity to stress test it.
Yeah. And also have the humility to stress test it as well, because I think sometimes people in our profession they can feel a little vulnerable and a little exposed. It's like an artist showing a painting to someone for the first time and someone telling them that it's terrible or being worried. Not everyone's going to agree with you. And it's okay to not have all the answers. You will be much better off if you stress test that and allow yourself to be open to learn from others. Denny, another thing I want to ask you, AI is a big thing everyone's talking about. What are you seeing as some of the other emerging trends in the industry that you believe are going to shape its future?
To me, is the mentioned supply chain risk. And I've been spending a number of years researching on that. In fact, I completed a postgraduate research at McCoy University a couple of years ago under common scholarship, applying FAIR to imagine how do you manage cyber risk across supply chain. And the insight is that in a supply chain, as you would agree with me, that the only thing you can do is ask the right questions, because by definition, you're not allowed to interfere or give instructions to suppliers, because that could put your contract at risk and basically transformed that conversation into a compliance conversation and alleviating the responsibility for managing risk and just comply with your instructions. And so that is, of course, with the geopolitical tension globally, supply chain management is going to grow with the fragmentation of global supply chain. People are going to find an innovative way to cut costs. And how you can do that is split the supply chain, so you can get certain supply, at least some of those, in a lower cost channel when they're not watching, and lower your own costs if they don't find out. And the most scalable sustainable tool to manage supply chain risk, at least that's what I searched in my research, is to focus on the risk measurement rather than risk model. Because the alternative for the risk model, often that is very intuitive and inviting, is you can get yourself into difficulty by creating friction with suppliers and also your internal organization, debating the merit of the risk model. While they certainly can be improved and technology will change, AI will change that, that's not helping them or you at the heat of the moment, because the contract not changed. And unless the contract is changed, changing risk model are not going to result in anything other than grief and disagreement. So live with what you can. Imperfect it may be, the risk model. You sharpen your tools in risk measurement and get people to understand and accept the risk measurement, come from the risk measurement. Now, as I said earlier on a number of times, agree to disagree. Now you can focus on what can we do collectively given that disagreement. What is that we can exchange to enable us to work around the challenging economic and supply chain situation.
Fantastic. Denny, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your voice with us. And yeah, we'll see you around. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Cyber Voices. Our music is by Sanar Garut, our show artwork is by Studio Quarantine, and we record our show at This Is a Studio in Pran, Melbourne, part of Popplant Productions. Please make sure you follow the show on your podcast platform of choice and leave us a 5-star review. This will help others find the show. Also, please follow the association on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you want to add your voice to our ever-growing chorus of diverse cyber voices, have questions, feedback, or would like to be a sponsor, you can do so by emailing us at cybervoices@aisa.org.au. That's cybervoices@aisa.org.au. Are you an AISA member? If not, you should consider joining our network of over 12,000 members across Australia. An AISA membership can open doors, build professional networks, create lifetime friendships, and offer exclusive training, events, and other perks. Become a member today by heading to our website at aisa.org.au. That is all for today. I hope you will join us again next time on Cyber Voices.